Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint a rooster on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. This is a stretched 11 by 14 inch canvas, and I have my palette already loaded with 3 colors. I have titanium white, light blue permanent, and light violet blue. And I'm going to be using this 3/4 inch flat wash brush to start out with. So the first step in doing this painting is applying the blue background to the entire canvas. You see me double loading and mixing the white and the light blue together. So about equal parts white and blue mixed together, but you don't have to mix it all the way. I'm going to start at the bottom of the canvas and I'm going to do kind of medium angled strokes to blend those 2 colors together. So this entire background consists of these expressive, I call them X strokes because you're pretty much just painting a bunch of X's everywhere. You're just doing angles, kind of going in different directions. Some angles are overlapping each other. So this background has a light blue at the bottom and it gets slightly darker as we go to the top. We'll be adding more of the light blue violet. That's that slightly darker purplish blue that's at the top of my palette. But right now we're just doing about equal parts of the white and the light blue. And I'm just kind of applying that to the canvas, blending those colors gently, working fairly fast. If you need to let that paint kind of spread a little bit better, flow better, you can always dip your brush in a little bit of water, but not too much water, and kind of tap it dry and load the brush in the paint with that little bit of water. That helps to thin the paint a little, but it also helps get that paint to flow a little bit better. So this layer that we're painting our entire canvas is a relatively thin layer of paint. And I'm just going to keep working my way up the canvas, loading in the blue and the white. It does not have to stay consistent throughout. So right here, I'm about at the middle point of the canvas. So I'm going to start loading in a little bit more of that blue so I can get that color to be just a tad bit darker. Again, it doesn't have to be consistent. Yours will look different from mine. So I'm just going to keep applying that paint with those angular strokes, working my way up the canvas, working relatively fast because this acrylic paint does dry pretty fast. Occasionally grabbing some white in there and kind of blending it in and just working my way up, kind of relaxing, not really thinking too hard about why I'm applying that amount of blue there or that amount of white there. As you get to about the midway point or a little bit above the midway point, you'll want to go ahead and load your brush in the light blue violet and then grab more of the light blue violet and just kind of blend your light blue violet. That's that dark purplish blue out that the other blue on our palette here. So that one is going to be more towards the top of the painting. So we're going to be using a kind of a higher concentration of that blue at the top. It is slightly darker and just kind of gently blend with the rest. You can load more light blue violet or white on your brush to help get it to blend. In fact, I grabbed a little bit more white there to help get that to blend. At any point you need to pause this video, feel free to while you catch up. Just take your time, but keep in mind that the paint dries relatively fast. So you want to kind of work fast when getting this background all filled up. And also, of course, if you need a little bit of water on your brush, feel free to do that as well. I'm going to go silent here for a bit while I finish up painting my entire background. Once you finish your background, you're going to need to let this dry. It should dry relatively fast, especially since it's a thin layer of paint. You're going to need to print out the traceable that I have supplied with this tutorial. So look for the traceable printed out on an 11 by 14 or an 8.5 by 11 sheet of computer paper. And this will fit the 11 by 14 canvas just like this. So you want to position your rooster so it's kind of in the lower right part. His tail is right on the far right edge of the canvas, and there's plenty of a gap on the left side and the top side of his head. If you want him to be more centered, you can, but this one in the design is a little off-centered. And you're going to need to draw the fence post that he is standing on. So I'm just lightly sketching an oval right under his feet. Goes all the way around, so an elliptical shape. And then 2 vertical lines below that go all the way to the bottom edge of the canvas, and a horizontal line that goes across and overlaps almost to the middle part of our fence post, but not quite the middle part. And there's a curved line that goes down to the bottom of the canvas for the horizontal beam on the post. Just going to make my lines a little bit darker. And so there is our fence, and we are ready to start painting our rooster in. So there's a lot of colors that I used in this rooster, and all the colors are listed in the description tutorial part of this video. I'm going to start by painting the rooster from the top towards the bottom. So I'm going to start by loading my palette with the color Pyrrole Red. And I'm using a number 4 round brush. I'll be using this number 4 round brush for the majority of the rooster, and I'll be switching to a kind of a larger round brush when I do the tail. So load your brush in the water and kind of tap it dry, and then load it into the red. We're going to start at the very top and paint the comb of the rooster. That's the red piece on top of his head. So we're just basically filling our shape in. So I'm going to do kind of short strokes to kind of fill this shape in, kind of outlining the shape, and then contouring strokes to fill it in solid. That just means the direction that you're going with the paint is kind of going in the direction of the shape. Next, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but if you want to add a little bit of highlight color variation to the comb, load your brush in some white, mix the white and red together to get kind of a light red, and just lightly let that white kind of blend with the left side of some of the pieces of the comb. Maybe I can just do a few little strokes in there just to kind of give that some color variation and some pops of lighter color in there, and just like that. So then we're going to continue working down with this red, and I'm going to paint the wattle. So that's the red piece under his beak. So just same thing with the red, the Pyrrole Red, just outline your shape, and you can use a little bit of white in there as well and kind of blend that white in there and just fill in your shape that color. Just doing contouring strokes, that just means it's kind of a curvy stroke that's going in the direction of the shape. So this red kind of goes around the face eye area of the rooster. Then I'm going to load my brush and just the white this time and kind of blend it out a little bit on my palette. So this is a really light red, because it's going to give us enough contrast to go around our eye. So I'm just doing really short kind of curved strokes around that entire eye shape, but not painting over any of the eye. So this is just kind of his side face that goes around the eye, lighter in color so that it gives enough contrast and kind of stands out against our wattle and our comb, and just kind of going around that a little bit more. Then I'm going to introduce yellow to my palette. So this is cadmium yellow medium hue, and I'm not going to rinse my brush. I'm going to load it into the yellow, and it may turn kind of an orangey color, and that's okay. I'm going to start kind of on his back, and again, short sort of contouring strokes that go in the direction. So to create kind of that feather texture that we want, it's really about how you do your stroke. So just doing really short, quick strokes that are curved or angled going down in the direction of the shape that you're going in. And we want to create color variation. So that means when I go to reload my color, I may grab white and do a set of strokes. And then I may go back and reload and grab yellow and do a set of strokes. So you're kind of altering and kind of purposefully creating some color variation. So you have some parts of the feather that are kind of lighter, some that are a little bit darker, depending on when you go reload the brush and how much yellow or white you load on the very tip of the brush. You only want to load just a little bit of paint on the tip of your brush. So this upper part of his neck, kind of the area under the wattle, is all a combination of yellow and white. And because I still have red on my brush, occasionally some red is kind of coming off on my stroke, and that's okay, and making the color look kind of orangish. So I'm just kind of going back and forth, creating these angled quick strokes, and they're overlapping each other. That's what also creates the feather texture when you overlap it. I'm just kind of going in and adding more and more of those, and we want that color variation in there. Just kind of going down, contouring, filling in that shape with the white, the yellow. If you feel like you want to load more red on your brush, feel free to do that, but I wanted this to be much more kind of a yellow golden color than versus the red. There's still a little bit of red on my brush initially from painting the comb and the wattle. I'm just going to keep going down and kind of stop when I get to almost the part of where it kind of curves down, because that part is going to be a bluish color. I'm going to kind of go a little bit more on his back and then rinse the brush off. And before we start introducing our blues to our rooster, I'm going to go ahead and paint the beak in. So rinse this all off to get all that red off and all that extra white and yellow combination turned orange. We want to make a light yellow on our palette. So I'm going to mix about equal amounts white and yellow together, still using the number 4 round brush. So mix white and yellow together. It's going to make a light yellow, and it's also going to be opaque enough to show up against our blue background. So kind of twist the brush, get that paint right there on the tip of it. It's a small area to paint in, so you really want to get that paint right there on the tip of that and kind of twist it. And we're going to just paint that shape in. So just kind of outlining the shape of the beak and painting that in solid. We'll do the line, the black line thing later on after that dries. So there's our beak. And if you want, you can even go back with some white and just do like a quick little highlight at the top. Gives it a little pop of brightness right there on the top. Then we're going to paint the eye in. So the eye of the rooster, this entire bluish area, I'm going to just paint in yellow. So just one solid coat of that. And then we'll go back in with our black later and do his pupil. So go ahead, rinse, dry your 4 round brush. And we're going to introduce some pretty blue colors to our palette next. So I'm going to start by loading turquoise. I also used the color Phthalo Green, although Phthalo Green can be kind of an optional color because I ended up not using a lot of the Phthalo Green, and it's such a similar color to the turquoise, so you can almost do without it. Phthalo Blue is a color that dark blue color in the bottom thigh area and in the tail, provides a lot of really pretty contrast in the tail. So Phthalo Blue, Phthalo Green, and turquoise are the 3 new colors you're going to load, and then we're going to utilize our white to create different tints of those colors as well. So we can lighten our color with the white, and we're going to go ahead and start with our 4 round brush, and we're going to do the front breast area just under our yellow feathers. So the technique is exactly the same, only we're using turquoise this time. So we're still going to do short curved strokes to create the texture of the feather. Then you can reload your brush in a teeny bit of white. Don't use too much white, just a tiny bit of white right there on the tip of your brush. And just do some wet on wet blending with that white to create some more feather texture. So that little bit of white is going to give us that tint, that color variation in our turquoise to make it look like it's got that feather texture. Then grab some phthalo blue as you go towards the bottom thigh area of your rooster. So this whole bottom area above his legs and feet is that phthalo blue. Same technique, short strokes that are kind of curvy, sort of feathered strokes that go in the direction of the shape that you're filling in. So about right here above our thigh area, I'm going to switch to kind of a turquoise, and this is turquoise and the phthalo blue kind of meshing together in this area. So just kind of pay attention to the direction of your strokes. It's kind of curving in sort of a rounded direction in the middle of our rooster. And so right here, I grabbed some more white. See how it's kind of curving, more rounded strokes over here, almost kind of expressive scribble-like, but it is more curvy and rounded right there. A little bit of white helps to bring that out and does some wet on wet blending. So a little bit more white right there on the tip of the brush, and just kind of going little angled strokes. It's okay to overlap some of your yellow feathers. That yellow should be dry by now, so it's not going to drag yellow down into your blue area, so that's okay. And we could always go back and apply more yellow feather textures and have that overlap our bluish area. So it's all about just kind of utilizing that white to create different tints of that, and that's how we create that kind of shiny look with the white, but also that texture feather that we want to get with our rooster. Also, a tip is to try not to overblend and overwork your colors. So leave it unblended, and that's what also creates more of that texture look. So I've grabbed some more phthalo blue, and I'm going to apply just a little bit more phthalo blue in this under tail area, but I'm not going to work on the tail yet. The tail will be using a different technique, and we're not going to do the tail just yet. I'm actually going to rinse my foreground and grab a little bit more yellow. So what I was mentioning earlier, or about 10 seconds ago, was to utilize some of that yellow white to overlap some of our blue. So I just grabbed yellow and white, and I'm just kind of going over some of the areas, not too many. It looks fine as it is, but right here I just wanted some more of that yellow to overlap my turquoisey area up there. Just a teeny bit of red. Didn't use a lot of red in our yellow area, but just a tad bit of red just to create some orangey, darker colors in there. Maybe a few more down here, but again, I don't want to overwork it and I don't want to overblend it. So then we are going to do the tail. So the tail, similar technique, different brush and longer strokes is what we're going to do. I'm going to switch to my number 8 round brush, which is a larger brush, and it's going to be used to create longer, thicker strokes that we want to have in our tail. So I loaded that into the water, and now I'm loading that into phthalo blue with a little bit of turquoise. The water is going to help get it to flow nicely. I'm going to start at the back. Just kind of do a few shorter strokes to kind of test it out, but then do one long stroke and press down on that brush to create our first tail feather. So you're putting pressure on your brush to do this. So kind of test it out first. This second time around, I grabbed the turquoise, and then kind of the same thing, just kind of put pressure on the brush to form the kind of arced tail. Grab some white and then kind of mix that together to make a lighter form of that. And I'm just kind of doing that white on the end of the tail just to create that color variation. So I'm doing pretty much the same technique what I was doing with the wet on wet blending, using the white to lighten some of my strokes up, but these are just longer strokes and with a different brush. So this part of the tail kind of goes down and up. I grabbed some Phthalo Green that time. That creates that more of a greenish tone, and I'm just kind of stroking that upwards, and then grabbing Phthalo Blue right here, doing that kind of longer strokes, kind of quick. I'm not going back over my strokes as much, so you do the quick, so it just kind of runs out. Starts out nice and flowy at first, and then just kind of runs out when you get to the tip of that. It creates the feathery look on the end. So there's just different contrast in the tail. Some of the strokes are darker, some are lighter. So you can go back in with some darker Phthalo Blue strokes to create the darker tones in the tail. And then you can go back with some lighter colors with the white to create a tint, some lighter tones in there. You just want to try not to overblend because you want the different color variations in that tail. Did a few smaller strokes. I know my hand is covering that right there, but just a few smaller strokes of the Phthalo Blue right where that tail kind of meets some of the orangey color tones in there, so that it looks like that tail's attached. There's no canvas. There might be a little bit of background showing through, but it's not noticeable. So there shouldn't be any huge blue sky gaps showing in your rooster, but it also doesn't have to be 100% covered. So I'm going to go ahead and load some titanium white onto my palette. I'm going to go in here with that white without rinsing the brush, and I just want to add some lighter tones in there. You always want to just kind of test it out first by lightly applying it, so we don't want it to be too strong and take over. But just a few lighter color with the white in there. And next we're going to do the feet. So I'm going to grab some Pyrrole Red, some yellow, mix the red and yellow together to kind of make an orangey color. Not to mention there was still some blue on my brush because I didn't mix the brush. So mix a little bit of blue into your red, into your yellow. We just want to kind of make a dark sort of orangey color. It doesn't have to be exact like a dark orange, just a little bit of blue in there, kind of more of a brownish orange color. And then I'm just going to take that. So this is just the number 8 round brush. I'm going to fill in the shape of the feet. So the feet are already drawn in for me. I'm just painting that in. If you want to use a smaller brush, like the 4 round brush, because it's smaller area, you can switch to that if you want. I'm going to grab a little bit of white in there for color variation. You don't have to do this, but that little bit of white in there, just kind of going over what I already painted in, just letting that white kind of gently blend with that brownish orangish color, and I'm just painting in the shape of my foot. A little bit more yellow on my palette to kind of get this to be kind of more of an orangey color. You could also just get an orange that you have on hand and mix a little bit of brown into it to get that to be kind of a darkish orange. So I switched to my number 4 round in there, because it's a lot easier to do this with the smaller brush than that big brush. I'm just filling that in, going back over the claws. If you want to highlight them a bit, you can grab some titanium white and just kind of go over the top parts of the claw. And you don't have to do this, and we can always go back and touch it up later, especially after we paint the wood part in that he's standing on. Then I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush and load my palette with some Mars Black. I'm going to finish up his eye and do the little line on his beak, some Mars Black. You can also do this step with a black paint pen if you have one of those black post cup paint pens, because this is a very tiny detail. I just pinched the bristles of my 4-round brush to get that to be all gathered so I can do this very, very small circle right there in his eye. So that's all I'm doing is just that black circle right there inside of his eye. And then I can also do the line on the beak, so I can get in there. Again, you can twist the brush to get that paint right there on the tip and just do the curved line kind of in the middle of the beak. Then I'm also going to outline the outer part of his eye, so just at the top, curved just above our pupil and a little bit below, but didn't go all the way with that. So that's just the outline part of it. I can also do a little bit of black under his claws, but we're going to paint the wood stuff in, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense to outline the claws right now until we're done with the wood and we're ready to do that. So we're going to do the wood next, the wood fence post, and that consists of burnt umber. You'll need Mars Black and titanium white as well, and we'll be using our 3/4 flat wash brush. So get that all rinsed off and start with the brown and a little bit of white. So I'm going to double load my brush in brown, so about 3 parts brown and 1 part white, and we're going to paint up and down strokes, letting that brown blend, but not all the way. That's how we're going to create that wood grain texture. So the brown and white blend, but not all the way. And we're going in vertical strokes because that's the direction of the grain of the wood. On this piece, it's going vertical. Also use the tip of the brush to outline the curved piece, then use the full width to paint in solid, thick strokes going vertical. It's okay to overlap our horizontal beam because we're going to paint that horizontal beam next so it overlaps the cylinder piece. So I'm going to load my brush in some more brown. Actually, I'm going to kind of wipe this off to get some of the excess white on it. And I'm just going to go in and add some more strokes of this brown and even extend it on the side of the canvas too. Haven't been demonstrating painting the sides of the canvas, but you can always take the color that you're using and extend it on the side just like that. And then I grabbed my T-square ruler just to double check to make sure the sides of our fence post are vertical, and they are. And if they're not, you can always take that and use that as a guideline to adjust it. And then we're going to go ahead and start painting our horizontal piece in. So the horizontal piece, remember there is that curved line in there. And instead of vertical, I'm going horizontal because the direction of the grain for this piece, because the piece of wood is on its side, it's going horizontal now. But same technique. I started with the brown and I'm doing horizontal strokes. You can add a little bit of white in there to get that wood grain look. A little bit of white. Horizontal strokes, try not to overblend it. Then I'm going to set my 3/4 wash aside and go back to my number 4 round and grab Mars Black. I'm going to do a little bit of outlining and defining with my wood, starting with the top piece, outlining that top oval piece, just kind of sketching, going around with that black, going around my claws. I don't want to overlap any of that with the black. I'm going around it and outlining this part right here. It is darker. That part of the wood piece is darker in our final result, so we'll be using some more black up there. But for now, I'm just going to kind of paint this pretty much solid black, and I'm just kind of going around my claws the best I can. There's a lot of little angled areas to go in, but I have to fill that in. Kind of a combination of black and brown, so you want to like double load your brush in the brown and the black. I'm loading some more burnt umber on my palette because it's a really, really dark brown. So grabbing brown and black on the tip of my 4 round brush, and I'm going around our claws, just kind of outlining, going around, filling it in. I want to cover all of that space up. If you accidentally painted over parts of the claws, you can always wait for the brown to dry and then go back and kind of redo some of it. Then I took my 4 round brush and I did some vertical strokes in there with that darker color to create more of that wood grain look. I also outlined that part of our beam, the horizontal beam that kind of curves, and I added some darker browns towards the bottom to create kind of a shadowy area in that spot. Then rinse and dry, and we're gonna go and do some little bit of highlighting on our wood. Grab some white, teeny bit of the brown slash black mixture. It might end up being kind of grayish looking. Watering it down slightly so it's kind of thin and I can blend it. And just doing a very subtle kind of horizontal strokes across the top part of the beam to highlight it a little bit so that sun might be hitting that part of it, but the bottom part is a little bit more shadowy. And then I'm going to go into this part right here and add some texture. Going in curved direction, that kind of creates that curvy texture on the top part of our wood right there. And just doing some more vertical lines with that lighter color as well. Add some lighter kind of color variation or highlight into our wood. And then going back in here, adding some more. I kind of like the look of that, so I wanted to add some more on this side. The curved texture in there gives it that wood texture on the top of the post. Then I added just a teeny bit more of brown, darker color right here on the right. Just a few little more vertical lines on the right. Gives it a little pop of contrast just in that area. Okay, next we are going to do the grass and flower details in this painting. I'm going to go ahead and load my palette with some fresh phthalo green. I'll also be using the Hooker's Green Hue Permanent color. The phthalo green is that bluish green color that we used a little bit in the rooster's tail. So we have the phthalo green, which will give it kind of a darker bluish gray color in the grass, and the other color I loaded was the Hooker's Green hue. I'm also going to load some Cad Yellow Medium in there so that we can mix a little bit of yellow into our grass colors. When I do grass, I like to do like a variety of greens to give some color variation. And I'm going to start by mixing the phthalo green and the Hooker's Green together. Teeny bit of red in there, just teeny tiny bit of red. That's going to darken the green up and it's going to make it kind of more of a natural color. So these grass blades I'm going to paint first are going to be really dark, but then we're going to add some more layers of lighter grass blades. So these are kind of the further back dark shadowy grass blades that we're going to paint first. And so when I do grass, I start at the bottom and I just kind of flick my brush up and kind of release the pressure of the stroke. I will move my hand here just a second. I'm just doing the vertical slash kind of diagonal lines with those grass blades. You might find that the number 8 round brush works much better because that brush has a point to it, more of a point than that 4 round. So I'm actually going to switch to that brush here. This is that number 8 round. I'm going to kind of repeat that again. So that darker green color, I'm going to go ahead and mix a little bit of yellow into that. So this is a different kind of color. And then I'm just going to go in and do another layer of grass. So just start at the base, the bottom part, and just flick the brush up with each stroke kind of going in a sort of vertical, sort of angled direction. So this next layer is a little bit lighter because I added that yellow to it. But when you want to release the pressure when you go up. So your grass blade goes to kind of a tip. So it starts out thick at first, and then you're releasing the pressure of the brush using more of the tip of the brush to get that grass blade to go to more of a point. And when I go to reload, I grab different variations of the green, of the phthalo, of the hookers, of the white and yellow, just to get that color variation in the grass. On my palette, I'm going to grab a little bit more yellow and a little bit more white and kind of mix whatever's left on my brush here together. It's going to make kind of a lighter green, and then go back and do another layer. So this is the lighter layer that's kind of overlapping the first layer. It might be blending with other layers of grass, and that's okay. I'm going to do that on both sides. Some of these lighter blades I'm pushing up a little bit taller just to get kind of a variety of height in the grass. So that's it for the grass. If you need to go and adjust the feet, for example, if you painted some of that brown over the feet and now the brown is dry, you can go back in and kind of touch up the feet, the claws. And that's what I'm doing right here. I just mixed an orange on my palette with the red and the yellow and a little bit of brown in it, and just kind of touching that up. Next, I'm going to paint the flowers. So there's 2 white flowers, a yellow flower. So those ones are kind of the daisy type of flowers. And there's also 2 purple hyacinth flowers. So I'm going to start by doing the centers of the 3 daisy flowers. And I loaded my palette with titanium white. That's going to be for the petals. And this is burnt umber for the centers of the daisies. So I'm going to start by painting the centers. I'm going to load my number 4 round brush in the brown, that dark brown color. You can also do this with black. It's just a dark center. So I'm doing not a circle, more like an oval elliptical sort of shape. And I'm going to do 3 of them, so kind of different heights. And you can place your flowers differently than mine. You don't have to do them in the exact same spot that I'm doing. So there's 2, and then the yellow one is going to be right here. Then I'm going to rinse, dry, and grab my titanium white. So I'm going to do the petals of this. So our petals start out kind of narrow and touch our center, but then they get kind of thicker and rounded at the tip. So start by doing a narrow base for your petal, and then go outwards and do kind of a larger, more thicker, rounded edge to it. So I'm just going to do the petals all around. And this one particular flower, the petals are kind of shorter at the top and longer at the bottom because this flower is more at an angle. Feel free to change that if you want. If you want your petals to be all the same length, you can do that way. This flower over here is only going to have the bottom petals because that flower is at an angle as well, but more of a tilted angle. So I'm just doing the same thing. The petals are narrow at the base, but then kind of get more rounded and larger towards the end. And keep it simple too. We're not doing realistic flowers by any means, just very simple wildflowers that happen to be growing by this post. And maybe just a few more petals next to it, smaller ones. And then the one over here on the left is very similar to the one on the right. Narrow at the base, but then gets wide and more circular at the end. So I'm going to make those go all the way around, and they're kind of similar in length. Next, I'm going to paint the hyacinth. So it's kind of like a little dots of purple flowers forming kind of a long, narrow, almost cone shape. So I loaded my palette with Dioxazine Purple. And this is the 4 round brush. So all I'm doing is stippling. I'm just painting little dots. And you can also do this technique with a Q-tip if you want to prefer that. But I'm just doing that on the tip of my round brush. And I'm dotting. And it's going at an angle, creating a narrow sort of triangular cone shape for this flower. So this is going to go down a little bit further. And then I'm going to load the tip of my brush in titanium white and kind of go back over that flower and let that white sort of blend with the purple already on there. And that's going to create the lighter color in the purple for this hyacinth. And I'm just going to extend this down a little bit further. This piece is behind our flower on the left, so I want to try to make it look like it is going behind it. And then I'm going to do another one that's going kind of at an opposite direction to the right of it. It's going behind the flower. So, but again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just doing little dots, forming that narrow sort of cone shape, and then going back over that with titanium white and doing some wet on wet blending with the white that's going to blend our purple and white together to create some lighter colors in our flower. And I'm just going back over that first one again with some more little dots and just keep dotting it until you form the shape of that flower. Going back with some more titanium white. You don't have to cover everything with titanium white. You can just add little bits of white in some places, but you don't have to put it in all the places. Then I'm going to do the stem and leaves on some of these. We have a lot of grass going on, so it's not going to be very easy to get these stems and leaves to really stand out, but I'm going to attempt to paint them anyway. So with the same kind of green, the Hooker's green mixed with a little bit of yellow, you could even put like black in it if you want to darken it, or brown in it if you want it to be dark and stand out. But I just did 2 stems connecting the hyacinth flowers, and I did a really simple thick kind of leaf on the bottom. And then I'm going to paint my yellow flower, the one that's on the center. So grab some more of the Cad Yellow medium and make sure the brush is all cleaned off and rinsed, number 4 round. And I'm just going to paint over the petals. This yellow is going to stand out so nicely next to those purple flowers. So I'm just going back over those petals, painting them yellow instead of white because that white is now dried. So your yellow will be nice and bright because of that. And the other ones aren't going to be yellow. I'm going to leave the other 2 flowers white, but if you wanted those to be yellow flowers, that would be pretty too. And then do the little stem on our daisies. Another little stem over here. The rest of this painting is pretty much touch-ups. So these little touch-ups that I'm doing, you may find that you maybe don't need to do those depending on how your painting is turning out. But I decided to take my 4 round and loosely outline the top part of our fence post. And then I grabbed a teeny bit of white to loosely outline the top. So you may or may not want to do that depending on how much contrast you want in that area, or if you want it to be outlined a little bit or not. I also put a second coat of paint on my flowers, on the white flowers specifically, to get that white to really be bright and opaque. So that's what I'm doing here. Just a quick second coat on all of these petals. Then another little detail I did was take the white on the very, very tip of my round brush, and I did a little tiny white dot right in his eye. Gives him just a bit of highlight on his eye, and then just a little pop of white right there on the top of his beak. If you wanted to put like a butterfly or a bee up high in the sky, you can. I almost did that, but then thought I liked the simplicity of not having anything up in the sky. But I did extend my grass over here on the left to be just a tad bit higher than my hyacinths. Gives the painting a little bit more height over here. Thought about extending it even higher, but that's was enough for me to feel like the painting was balanced enough. Again, if you wanted to add some more things, clouds, butterflies, bees, whatever you want kind of up in the sky, you can. Went in there, did a few more darker stem things under my daisies. And there's one last thing I'm going to do, one last detail is I'm going to add just a little bit of brown in some areas of the rooster, not too many, just a few little areas, specifically on the bottom part of the top part of his head. So just a teeny bit of brown right here, just kind of loosely outlining this piece right here, a little bit of brown, and then on the kind of the top part of his waddle a little bit, just a few little darker areas in there, and then over here on the top right part of his eye face area, just a few little strokes of brown in there, a few little strokes of brown. I didn't want to add too much brown, but just enough dark areas to kind of give it some darker areas, some contrast. But that is it, my friends. This is the conclusion of how to paint a rooster acrylic painting tutorial. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.